The very first time you get your hands on a book, you are met by a cover. A cover that, while staying true to its genre, should be a visual masterpiece. In this episode, we'll be turning my self-help / religious book into a visual masterpiece. Welcome back to The Brief. Welcome back, everyone, to Designing Book Covers, which honestly is a more fitting name because that's clearly all we're doing. In this episode, we'll be talking about my first book, the one that's actually coming out in about a month or two, and that's With Love and Prayers. A quick introduction to anyone who may not know this book. This is a self-help / religious book where I take verses and everyday life problems that we go through, addictions to phone, our relationship with the government, finding a life partner, anxiety, anger, so many different things. I try to find answers through the Bible, but not only that, I try and show just how practical the Bible is by also leaning on psychological research, medical studies, behavioral science, so many different things to show you that the Bible and science are not enemies. The Bible is the foundation for science. But that's a very, very basic summary of the book. To give a bit of a progress update to the book is pretty much done, and if I wanted to, I could release it right now, but there are a few tweaks that I just want to make. Then in terms of publishing, this is probably where most of the challenge has been for me because this is my first book. I don't really have much guidance, so I'm figuring everything out while trying to write a book that makes sense. But I have platforms that I'll be selling through. In South Africa, you'll be able to buy my book through Burble as well as Amazon. I think Amazon is available in South Africa now. I will also be uploading to Ingram Spark, so you should be able to get it in stores. I don't know, I'll confirm all of this once I actually get it all done, but make sure you follow me on the socials to get updates as soon as they're available. Then in terms of an audiobook, I think I will put that aside for now because I want to get this book to you as soon as possible. Recording an audiobook takes so much work, more than I anticipated. So if I was to do that, it would put me back months, most probably. It's either we will release an audiobook for this book at a later stage or for my next book, Where the Sun Goes After It Sets. That's it for the updates. Let's get into designing. I made 14 different covers of With Love and Prayers before I got to my final design, and that's because I did not have a strong concept. That's one of the things that we spoke about in the first episode of The Brief, that designing with a strong concept will help you with the direction. It will tell you where you need to go with your design. Now, the reason I don't have a concept is because I hadn't even written the book. I just had an idea that I need to be writing about verses or whatever, and I just started designing. And I mean, there's a case to be held for that as well, that you get an idea, you might as well just get started, but you know, you'll find your issues later on. I realized that there were two elements that I was missing mostly that I learned about later on while designing these covers, and one, it's defining my audience. You need to define who your book is for, and that means knowing what your book is actually about. So obviously, by me just designing without the content, I wasn't going to be able to get this. Eventually, I figured out that this is a self-help book and it's a religious book. Now, religious books and self-help books, in terms of cover designs, they're quite similar. And I've realized that there are a few characteristics that are common across all of them. They have very clear designs and they have a very concise message. A perfect example I can give you are two books. One of my favorites, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a and Chasing the Scream. Now, these covers, very simple, very striking, and very clear. That's one thing I had to bring about in my book. Another thing is that there is a clear color psychology going on. Colors play a big role in the message that you're trying to bring across in your book. My book needed to be calming, it needed to be something that you can trust, so I needed to find colors that actually spoke about that. And you'll realize that in the early stages of me designing, none of this thinking was there, but we got there eventually. Second thing is, you need to capture the essence of your book. through a unique detail that supports the message of the book. So for me, I had essentially 3 concepts across these 14 designs. The first concept really didn't capture much of the essence of the book, but the second and third tells you much more about what I was trying to bring across. That became the foundation of my designing from, I guess, the second and third concept. But let's get into my first concept. My first concept was very text heavy. At the beginning of my designing, I just called this the Everyday Handbook, because ultimately that's what I wanted this to be. I wanted it to be a handbook through life, a handbook through your everyday problems, and a book that you can use almost as a manual for life. Now, my issue with this was that it was way too simple. It was just text on a very plain background, and I think if I was to go into a bookshop, I wouldn't buy this. I wouldn't be interested by it because there's no visual appeal to it. Even the subtitle, a collection of solutions to the problems we face every day. It was very simple, and it's okay. Again, like I said, you have to start somewhere. This is where I started. If you remember from the other episode of The Brief, I told you that I really like combining a serif or a sans serif for the script font. So for me, when I did this, it was like me saying, hey, here's going to be my visual appeal, the font. But if anything, this looks like a cover for a journal and not really a book that you would want to keep in the house. And hey, I mean, there's something to be said for simplicity, but for me, this was a bit too simple. So that was pretty much concept 1. Concept 1 was all text. There was hardly any color. And in terms of design, it was just font choices. That's about it. And then we get into the second concept. And at this point, I was starting to get a bit more direction because I think I had written about a letter or 2. So I knew that the essence of this book is us finding a life worth living by solving our problems. And so title changed from the Everyday Handbook to A Life Worth Living. And I kind of think that this title was inspired by the popular book, A Little Life. And the subtitle also changed now to Solutions to Life's Challenges. A bit better, a bit more to the point, but still not my favorite. But now at this point, I had a unique detail that I brought out from the book that was now on the cover. And that detail is the sparrow. The sparrow is one of those figures that are used throughout the Bible to bring across a message. A small bird, a small, seemingly worthless bird, but the Bible says that God has his eye on the sparrow, so I know he watches me. So at this point of writing, that was the foundation of the book, that God has his eye on the sparrow, so I know he's taking care of me. I designed quite a few versions of this cover, starting off with just sparrows flying through the air, and you'll notice that this is also still kind of text heavy and the sparrows just seem like an add-on. Then from there, got a bit closer up, wanted to turn this cover into a piece of art, so I got an actual painting of a sparrow, which I liked, but that quickly changed into my final version of A Life Worth Living, which is this very contrasty cover. I liked how much the red of the text contrasts with the blue of the bird. Subtitle changed, Navigating Life with Ease, a bit better, but still not my favorite. This cover concept was one of my favorites, and I think I will be saving this for another book. I will probably use such a cover for a later book. We'll figure that out eventually. I liked this cover so much that this eventually became the cover for the book for quite a while. And I put my designing aside and I started writing. Now, at the beginning of this video, we spoke about how I didn't have a concept for this book because I had not written anything. In writing, I started figuring out a lot about what I want this book to be about. So I wrote quite a few letters, and eventually actually wrote the blurb itself, the description at the back of the book. Before we actually get to the final cover design, let me actually show you the back of the book and read the blurb for you. Life is full of hurdles, and with some help, we can overcome any and all hurdles if we make use of the wisdom that God has shared with us. In a series of heartfelt letters, With Love and Prayers takes you on a journey through scripture, uncovering timeless lessons that speak directly to what you are facing today. Each letter dives deep into a verse, reflecting on it, advising from it, and accompanying it with practical life lessons and reliable research. From the search of a life partner to battling with church hurt and learning how to pray, this book discusses the real issues that we face today, showing how spiritual and psychological healing go hand in hand. This is not just any book. This is a companion for anyone trying to rediscover a life worth living. Two main elements that I took out from this that eventually informed my final design: heartfelt letters and a life worth living. So now I knew that the foundation of this book is to be written as letters. Every letter at this point, every chapter at this point had been written as a letter. So I knew that somehow the cover needs to speak to this concept of letters. And then that previous title of mine, A Life Worth Living, felt like a subtitle for the book. So Rediscover a Life Worth Living eventually became my subtitle. And just to speak on this back cover, I also have an about the author section at the back of the book. I'm still kind of debating whether this will be on the outside of the book or page inside, but I wanted to have a message directly from me speaking to you and why I'm doing what I'm doing, and hopefully you can take away something from that as well. And also to, just have a nice picture of myself on an actual book. By the time I designed my final cover, the name had changed and it had stuck. With Love and Prayers came to me as an epiphany. I think the fact that I was writing letters made me think of how do I sign out of my letters. So, letters sign off with yours truly, kind regards, best wishes. For me, it was With Love and Prayers. So every letter that you'll come across in this book is signed off with love and prayers. And that felt like a great title for the book. I mean, I even tried making an Instagram page. With Love and Prayers was free. I think on TikTok as well, it was free. So for me, that told me that this is where we're going. With Love and Prayers, the book about letters. Now, the first cover was somewhat very on the nose again, because it was basically a brown envelope, written on by hand and full of like postage stamps as well as ink stamps. For this cover, I designed each one of these stamps by hand. And the fact that I'm not using this cover hurts me because I put a lot of effort into these stamps. So I need to find a way of making use of these stamps so that they don't just go to waste. I also really like the text because it looks like it was actually handwritten on by like a brush or whatever. And it's been brushed, it's been rubbed off over the years. The subtitle is written on another white sticker, but it's a bit too long for me because it says rediscovering what it means to live a meaningful life. That eventually shortened into what we have right now. To talk you through a bit of what makes this cover special for me, let's start with the actual image itself. Now, we said we want this to be related to letters. And I think the only thing that relates well to letters is an envelope. So that's exactly what this is. This is not an image of an envelope. This is something that I actually drew up in Photoshop. So this flap, this texture, all of this was added in Photoshop, was drawn in Photoshop. The color, remember we spoke about how color psychology plays a big role in self-help books. Apparently, blue symbolizes trust, it symbolizes peace, and it also symbolizes wisdom, which is what this book is all about. I wanted it to be almost like a Victorian era envelope. So Victorian era, they were very much into script fonts, And that's what we went with here. Same for my name at the bottom. I initially wanted to put a little symbol on the cover that will also be visible inside the book, but I don't know. I wanted to have this cover more about this golden wax seal that just says love. And in essence, it's saying that each of these letters are sealed with love. And that's it for the front cover. This has been with me for about 3 or 4 months with very subtle tweaks, but I think we're officially done changing this cover. Just one more little element that I wanted to show you that I'm very proud of is in the inside of the book. So the book is made up of sections. These sections being the introduction, section 1, 2, 3, and epilogue. Now each of these sections, I mean, if you look through books like Chasing the Scream, this is another book that's made up of sections as well, and each section is this very plain page with just the section title. I didn't want it to be that plain, so to carry on with this Victorian, very regal design language that we find on the cover, I made this flourish type of border inside the book. Because I feel in a book like this, you need a breath of fresh air throughout the book, so it's not just text, but a bit of a design element inside the book as well. I think that's the only thing that I'll show you from the interior. If you would like to see anything else in With Love and Prayers, make sure to stay tuned. Follow me on Instagram at cjmoyo.cc or at With Love and Prayers. Follow me on TikTok at With Love and Prayers, and you'll be the first to know whenever this book is available to the public, whether digitally or the physical copy itself. Thank you so much for being involved in this journey so far. We're almost at the end, and I hope that I'll be able to deliver a book that'll help you to rediscover a life worth living. With love and prayers.